GM, one and all. Welcome to our all hands meeting for March 11th, 2025. Let me take a quick attendance. We have Links, we have Art Christie, we have Tom, we have Sprinkles, and we have Winverse. All right, welcome everyone. So we're going to try to use this time to sync up on work going on around the BFoundation or eliminate blockers and prioritize work for the next week. We are aiming to help purpose-driven communities use Web3 tooling to generate revenue engagement. We are kind of working out what that means a little bit more and more every week. Oops. And on the like metric side, oh, sorry. Before we get into that, how to participate, we are a do-ocracy. If you want to see something happen, just do it. Post about it on Discord and get some feedback, and then post it in the What Did You Ship channel. And we send out Black Flag Token weekly. The more you do, the more ownership you gain of BFoundation. That is the goal. That is kind of the mechanism. On the lag metric side, this is what we're trying to achieve. We have 51,000 in our vault, generating yield for us. Actually, there's more than that, but I haven't added the WEF yet. Transaction volume is 40.69. So that's down. Oh, it's actually down $4, not $2. Lead metrics, we have 4 weekly contributors, 6 weekly external engagement, and 206 monthly burn rate. On the standard announcements, oops, you know what? I forgot to put the break that we're going to be taking. Yeah, so this is our last meet for pretty much a month. March 18th, March 25th, April 1st, and April 8th are canceled unless someone else wants to come here and hold them. But I'll be traveling and I won't have access to a computer. So yeah, I'm gonna be taking the time to think on our mission and also just like get out of the day to day and hopefully be inspired. So I hope that you guys get a chance to do the same. All right. Let's go down from a product perspective. B page is getting to first launch. No progress on this. Hopefully, I will move it forward when I get back. Automation of monthly and inactivity emails. Tom, how's it going?
The monthly statements email has been automated and is scheduled to good to go on production so far as we know, and currently in a holding pattern on the inactivity emails just to make sure that everything is 100% tight and ship shape before we start pushing through unnecessary emails that way.
All right, awesome. Thanks for that, Tom. On the Black Flag Collective side, I did disperse January funds and share them on socials. The February vote is up. It's just me, so it's not a big deal. But I'm hoping that we get multiple events in March. So if you're ever thinking of doing an event, please do. And on the taxes, the state's taxes seem to have already been charged to us. So I need to check into this, Sarkozy. We talked about it last week, and I was like, yeah, they said they're going to charge me $400 and just take care of it. But they just charged me, and I'm just like, oh, okay, let me just double check what they actually charged for. So they charged it. I'll take a look, and I will let you know if it's what we need for state taxes. Sound good, Richard?
Yeah, and that's yeah. So I guess that's just like on auto pay or something, or
Yeah, it's on auto pay, I guess. I could probably turn it off on the thing. But and I could probably get it back if we didn't want to pay it. But
okay.
yeah, I mean, what did you think?
Well, I
Did you
think
want to try to do it
well, I think
ourselves
it's
or?
well, no, I think it's the Delaware filing. So
Yeah, so it's like $300 you have to pay a year to Delaware, and yep, cool. So I'll take a look at that and put it in the ops channel, and then we also have our Panama yearly report. Our federal taxes for the USA is already um, mailed, and yeah, hopefully they will receive it soon. Actually, they should have received it by now because it was like 2 to 3 business days. So I'll check on the tracking, and we shall see. All right. What did we ship last week? Winverse taped and shipped the all hands for 2 hours. I prepped and held the all hands. Wait a minute. I feel like I'm missing some stuff here. Maybe not. Okay, no, I guess not. Arcus entered contributor awards for week 9 into splits for final review and distribution. And I dispersed January in real life events fund. I updated our command line tool to be more modular, shared, and do the disbursement for me. And I also shared on socials, and I also sent out all of the contributor rewards. So that's kind of it for the last week. Anything else that we shipped that's not here? Okay. Last week we talked a little bit about sanctuary technology, which is what Vitalik was calling it. And he was saying this idea of sanctuary technology is that um, there is this idea that it's technology that allows you free open source technologies to let people live, work, and talk to each other, manage risk, and build wealth, and collaborate on shared goals in a way that optimizes for robustness and outside pressure. So that is sanctuary technology. You know, when you are kind of if there is a chaotic era like what is happening kind of now, he's saying that sanctuary technology can create digital islands of stability um, in a chaotic area to enable interdependence that cannot be weaponized. So this kind of idea that like, okay, what we have in Iran right now, we had we had the internet, and as soon as there's some attacks, they kind of well, I mean, the Iranian government, and this is not the first time they've done this, but lots of other governments, they might um, put down the internet, get people used to it, you know, connecting to people across the world, and then when they want to cause chaos, they might block the internet so people can't talk to each other. And it's a problem in multiple ways. It's kind of like you see it in banking as well, right? So you um, everything needs to be on banking rails, and then if someone decides, like they did in Canada a couple of years ago, that your bank accounts are closed for people who were protesting in the Capitol, then all of a sudden that can be weaponized against you. So the idea of sanctuary technology from Vitalik's point of view is to have technology that cannot be co-opted by other people. Does that make sense given those examples?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I liked Tom's analogy last week about the 401 and
Yep.
how like, and I guess there's at least two uh, reasons to have alternatives, even though like everybody might use it to get from point A to point B uh, quickly. Sometimes you want to take a different route because it's more scenic, or you see stuff that you wouldn't see on the main highway. Other times, you know, it may the main route may be blocked.
Yeah.
So the alternate routes are the only way around.
Yep.
And
And
if nothing existed, then nothing would move.
yeah, like if there was no alternate route, then um like I guess like the let's say the like inertia is for everyone to use the alternate route. But that also creates a situation um in which you can't like count on it if it's less resilient. Let's put it that way.
Hmm.
If everyone uses the same thing, it's less resilient. So that's kind of the idea, I guess. Um, yeah, and so the reason I brought it up is because I was like thinking about not just sanctuary tech, but like freedom tech in a way too, which is I would say there's a big overlap on that Venn diagram. But this idea of technology that is free from certain kinds of restriction, that is able to be used by anyone, anywhere. And I mean, so the reason I started thinking about this was because last week I read that there was a lot of um, like age verification in the operating system level coming to certain operating systems. So, for instance, in California, and I think like Minneapolis, there are laws that by 2028, if you want to sell an operating system in those jurisdictions, that operating system needs to do like a KYC when you install it. So basically, it needs to verify your age and then pass that information on to apps. So I felt like that was like, oh, that's really interesting. I mean, is it going to mean that certain operating systems are just not available to use? Is it going to mean that certain apps aren't available to use because you don't want to put your KYC information into the operating system? So I thought that was an interesting thing. Sorry, go ahead, Richard. I see that
Well,
that
I
you
was just gonna
unmuted.
say, like, with the like, how would they even verify like who's actually using the operating system?
I mean, I can
Because
only assume that
because
they're going
I
to.
mean,
Go ahead.
yeah, well, I mean, would that be like checking the age of any user that's actually using the operating system? So,
Yeah, I haven't looked too
or is it
deeply into the
just
law, but it might be. It might be. It might have to do on a per user basis. Like you're saying, like how can you know that I'm not like using your like you sign up for
like,
an account
or
and
yeah, or
my
like if
kid
you're,
is using it?
or if your kid, yeah, or if your kids are using, everybody's using the same computer and using the same login.
Yeah, I think it doesn't
Like,
really make much sense. I would say it's similar to like for instance, GDPR came out, and now we have all of these pop-ups asking us for cookie stuff, and it's very, very relevant to some websites, right? Like it's super relevant to things like Facebook or even just like going to a like a random blog or something like that, and they're asking like, hey, can we track you? But the way that they implemented it created a situation in which like very small sites were non-compliant, and I think that it's I guess like the proof is in the pudding, in some cases like the proof is in the implementation. How are they going to implement it? I don't know, and it would be interesting to see because it could answer your question. Go ahead, NF Thinker.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm so late to this call. You guys had daylight savings time, and we didn't because that's how the world works. So I'm just trying to catch up here. What's the topic here?
It was similar to last week when we were talking about sanctuary tech, and I said like, oh, it got me thinking about freedom tech, like tech that's usable by anyone, because I don't know if you've heard of this age verification law for operating systems, but in certain jurisdictions like California and I think Minneapolis or Minnesota rather, they are passing laws which will require the operating system to capture the age of the user and pass that um, to apps.
Okay. Yeah, there are some age verification things happening here in the UK as well. Um, um, in terms of operating system level, if someone is using someone else's terminal, obviously that's gonna register as them. I guess you're gonna want to, make sure that whoever else is using your machine isn't looking up stuff that is illegal or is illegal for minors, because I guess then in some way you're liable for that. Um, but yeah, that's interesting. I There's a lot of pushback over here in the UK over the age verification stuff because it's being billed as safety for children.
Yep.
But uh, deeper down, if you look into it, it's really kind of a surveillance mechanism.
Yes.
And
Agreed.
so how do you get around that? How do you avoid being surveilled if they require it on everything? Another interesting one over here, I'm not sure, maybe we spoke about it last week, is the client side scanning that is being discussed over here in the UK. It's not mandated yet, but essentially what client side scanning does is it puts a tracker, or it puts a, a ability for the government to view what's happening on your device specifically. So even if you send an encrypted message to someone and it's encrypted from end to end, they can still see what you're typing. They can see everything that
Hmm.
you're writing, and it's all reported back. So personally, I'm strongly against this type of stuff. I know there's a lot of pushback against uh, Musk and the technocrats who are kind of leading Twitter and who are kind of connected to, I guess, Palantir in the U.S. government. But I do commend Musk for putting freedom of speech at the front of the queue and forcing that issue to be discussed. Because we don't really want to go back to COVID times where people were being censored for speaking whatever their truth was, even if it was fact based,
Yep.
and getting literally kicked off of platforms. So, yeah, that's an interesting topic.
Yeah, it's interesting as well because like some of the things that you're mentioning, I think that like um first of all, I think that it's like that idea that like oh certain people talking about certain things, maybe you don't agree with their politics, but if you agree with with someone on a certain issue, you should be able to work together on that issue at least, right? I think that that's really important. Another thing is I think that while there are lots of technocrats who are kind of who are, let's say, for freedom of speech, there are also many technocrats who actually benefit from surveillance. And they might even be um, embedding themselves into like it actually might benefit them to have all the surveillance requirements. Like for instance, like if every operating system needs to have a surveillance requirement, that means that new operating systems now it's now harder for new operating systems to kind of come out. Like I think that this is you can see this more for Digital Millennium Copyright Act, right? DMCA. Every single social media site needs to have certain DMCA mechanisms in it, but only like because the mechanisms are so expensive, only really well-funded technology can really be can do that compliantly, which means that it reduces the amount of competition available in the space. And so I do think that the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and I think that sometimes people will say that they're kind of anti, but they might actually be pro. Um, Even this article that I have pulled up on my screen, it's saying like the technology that they're using to do age verification is being used to spy on adults who use the same computers, right? And so,
Yeah, and it's similar with over here. Europe is very I don't want to use the term predatory, but um, they it seems like they're privacy averse. And I mentioned last week how the UK is coming out against people working on privacy standards, and um, they want the ability to surveil. And I don't know how much of a conspiracy theorist the rest of you are, but a lot of the stuff that is happening in the world seems like it's pushing us in the direction of more surveillance because people want safety, right? They don't want child sex trafficking. They don't want drug use. They don't want illegal arms trafficking in their areas. And they're like, I'm not doing anything wrong. Go ahead. Yeah, just surveil everything. But what they don't realize is that they're giving up rights that they might not even know they have.
yep.
So, yeah, there's a lot of pushback here in Europe against some of the surveillance tech. And I mean, goes all the way back to George Orwell.
Yep. Yeah, and like I really I mean in the past it's always been I'm not in the past in let's say the recent past it's always been the US who's really been striving for privacy, or at least that was like kind of like a very, let's say it's baked into the United States culture that privacy is a right, not a privilege. And there are lots of people who are working on privacy tech in the United States, and lately we see that the government was actually working against that privacy from the beginning. You could see from the Snowden leaks and all these other kinds of things, that even 10 years ago, they were, if not violating the letter of the law, they were certainly violating the spirit of the law with the Five Eyes, right? And it wasn't just the United States government; it was the United States, it was Canada, it was Britain, it was lots of people. And so I think that like leaving privacy in the hands of the government is a failed proposition. Like no matter what happens, like anytime you trust the government to secure your own privacy, I think that is you're basically asking for failure. And so I think like when I think about freedom tech, I think about technology similar to sanctuary tech that can be used without needing to have like a government or private company between you and that technology, and is just available for anyone to use and does useful things. I think that there's some freedom tech that exists out there now. For instance, like Ethereum, you can transact on Ethereum without anyone's permission. Getting your funds in and out of fiat is a different matter, but anyone can earn money and spend money on Ethereum. Linux, anyone can install Linux on almost any kind of computer, right? No matter what kind of computer you have, you can probably find a version of Linux that works for you, right? This is just like free open software that you can use, and people have it. And I think that kind of like freedom technology is important. In fact, I think it's probably one of the front lines for this kind of let's say cultural. I don't want to say cultural war, but like um, I'm not really sure what it's the front line for. But I really do think that it's an important piece of all of the other issues that we're having right now. I don't know. Other thoughts on this?
It's interesting to see some of the standards that are coming out around security and how they are sort of helping us preserve our own privacy. Um, at the same
Yeah,
time, it's if you want to create a trusted economy, then you have to have some form of compliance. And in the crypto world, um, there's slashing. You can slash a bad actor if they're trying to game the system, and slashing can be thwarted through purchasing power, right? If you're rich enough to buy the network, then you essentially can control the network. Um, so it's interesting to see some of these other tools that are coming out that sort of prevent spying on people at the protocol level. There's privacy again at Denver. I've mentioned this before, but privacy was huge. There was uh, 10, 15 different privacy companies there, all working on slightly different things and at different levels. And you're seeing these companies, these chains and protocols making a shift towards privacy tech. So it seems like the cypherpunk ideals are still there, and people know what they're fighting for, and it's really a case of trying to push back against the legislators who are in the corner of not to name names here, but say for example Larry Ellison, uh, founder of Oracle, and um, Larry Ellison's goal is to get everybody's ID in one central location. They're doing that here in the UK as well with something called the digital ID. And it's a repository for all of your information. Everything goes on there. And Keir Starmer has been pushing it, and his party has been pushing it, and there's been a lot of pushback against that, saying, look, you're just creating a big honeypot for hackers. You are putting people's privacy at risk. And he'll come out and say, well, it's to combat illegal immigration. It's to make sure everybody has documentation when they work. Well, these things already exist. There are things in place to stop people from working illegally. And just because you put in a new measure doesn't necessarily mean that people are all going to all of a sudden follow the law. There's still going to be cash in hand work. There's still going to be people getting paid with crypto who aren't registered properly. So no matter what they use, what narrative they use to force this stuff down our throats, be it child safety or combat illegal immigration or make sure everybody is paying their taxes, at the heart of it, it's really just another control mechanism.
Yes, absolutely agree. It's just another control mechanism. And you've probably heard that saying that's like, if you outlaw guns, only outlaws will have guns. I feel like it's the same thing. Like we saw it happen during the whole piracy phase in the early 2000s, where they started adding tons and tons more private tons and tons more digital rights management, just basically making it harder for the customers who are actually paying to get the content that they paid for. And piracy still ran rampant, right? Like at the end of the day, pirates weren't deterred at all. And in fact, I mean, I can speak for myself. I was actually more encouraged to pirate because it was way easier for me to get, for instance, like to get Game of Thrones instead of on getting it through. It wasn't available in Canada, and so it was way easier for me to just pirate it than to than to get it from any other means, right? And it's just kind of silly because most people, if something is convenient, they'll use it. I think it's the same thing with a lot of this age verification, is that essentially they're just trying to make police work easier or maybe even like automated, so they can just look at everything that everyone does, and they can be like, oh, you're a criminal. But in my opinion, you can just, if you want to catch criminals, you should hire police to do police work rather than just surveil everyone. I feel like that is an unnecessary burden on the entire population because you want to stop certain things that I don't even know how big of an issue they are, because people don't even really um yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and even things like the defund the police protests that were happening. If you look at some of the funding that was pushed towards them, it comes from people who look like they might have ulterior motives. I know George Soros gets right through the coals quite a bit, but he funds some things which seem contrary to our everyday lives. Like defund the police. Now I can't guarantee that George Soros was funding that. But I do know that they needed funding to get from place to place and to make the signs and to create all these things. What was the point of defund the police? You defund the police, and then you had these politicians who demanded a full-time police officer at their house to keep away the violent protesters. Well, okay, there's no more cops around. What do you think is going to happen? So I don't know. I mean, the conspiracy theorist in me really looks at these things and thinks, is it by design? Is it to throw us into chaos? And there's even more chaos now as the Epstein files are unveiled. There is a lot more chaos being foisted upon us, like the war in Iran, which, they've been saying for years, Iran will have a nuclear bomb tomorrow, Iran will have a nuclear bomb next year, Iran is about to bomb us. And whether that was or wasn't the case, we can look back and see that the Iraq war was started because Saddam Hussein allegedly had weapons of mass destruction, and lo and behold, he didn't. It was a lie. The entire war was predicated on a lie. And looking further into the Epstein files, you'll notice that there were about 2.5 years of documents which are not really there. There's a lot of documentation, a lot of emails between, in the 90s up to 1999, and then they don't really come back until 2002, and then we have another big dump of files, and there's a lot of stuff that's missing in there. Some people who were really close to Epstein who want to give the illusion that they had nothing to do with him, and these people profited hugely off of 9/11. So yeah, I don't know how far we have to go until we get to the point where we have to overthrow the people who are actually at the helm and say, look, you're here. You're part of the problem, not the solution. But there's misinformation and there's so much media control that it's impossible for us to do so.
I agree, and I think that we're not going to beat them in a top-down battle, right? I think that this is where I think freedom tech is really important, or sanctuary tech. It's this idea that this technology can be useful even in a small area, even in a small amount of people. Among, let's say, the five of us here, we want to chat, we want to talk. We're not sharing anything illegal with each other. We're just we know who each other are, or we trust each other enough that we don't need to worry about you are what age you say you are, or anything like that, right? And so for that use case of a very small amount of people, we should have technology which allows us to connect, which allows us to work together, which allows us to build together, right? I think the part that gets that you start being kind of like in direct conflict with that existing top-down system is when there is one lightning rod, like it's a private company, and so that private company is running the services. Oh, okay, that means that private company can be co-opted by someone, right? And so that idea of can't be evil is more important than don't be evil. It's because a lot of these US based companies, they were actually forced by the government to do things like give up user data, and they were forced not to speak about it either. So it basically means that any private corporation can be co-opted, any government can be co-opted. And so the only, I would say, response to this is to create technology which is useful for a small amount of people, but hopefully, I guess we hope in the future that it will be applicable to a larger number of people the more that we use it for our own use cases. For instance, Tom was talking about oh, it'd be cool if we had an endowment fund for my local club. And yeah, it could be interesting, but right now, most of the people who are in this local club just won't use an on-chain endowment fund. It just doesn't make sense to them. But to build a compliant fiat endowment fund, you're going to need tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees and all these other kinds of things. So there's some gap there, which we can build useful technology, interesting technology, but it only works at that kind of local level at first. Hey, Tom, you and your friends can use this. Hey, I'm going to use this technology amongst me and a group of people who I trust. And it's only through creating those kinds of bottom-up networks, I think, that we're going to be able to stop participating in the system that I think a lot of us disagree with. I think to go back to your point, NF Thinker, when is enough enough? I think for me, I'm already reducing my participation in that system, and I've been doing it for years and years and years, right? I I think that it's on each of us to be able to remove ourselves from participating in that system, and it's not easy, and it's not something that everyone's going to be able to do. But the less we participate, the less power those people have. And I think that that's a very important thing.
It's hard though. I mean, we're here on Discord, and we know that it's very easy for a government to listen to what we're talking about right now because of the way Discord is structured. They're VC owned. All of our information is centralized. Tencent is one of the major shareholders, and they're a Chinese company, so it's highly likely that all our stuff is being siphoned off to the Chinese Communist Party and being dissected. But we still come back and have our conversations here. And when there were platforms like, what was it called? Contact, or can't remember. There was like a Discord alternative. Nobody really used it, and they went out of business because they couldn't really find PMF. So there are open source alternatives. There is self-hosting. You could use something like Matrix, which is a self-hosting Discord style server, but it doesn't give you all the benefits. We come to Discord because all our friends are here and people like the Nitro features and it's easy to communicate. But we don't see the drawbacks, right?
Mm-hmm. You're right. The drawbacks are kind of more long term, and the benefits are more short term, which I think is how a lot of modern technology is built.
Yeah, absolutely. There's you become the customer, and you don't really realize what that is until things like your privacy have been eroded to the point that you have none.
Yeah, so I think another thing, I mean, so you're absolutely right, it's hard. And it's not something we're going to be able to do overnight. And I also want to mention as well that um, I think anonymity, like, what does it matter if China's um, looking at our data if we're anonymous, right? So maybe like taking actions for us to become more anonymous when we're talking in this space could also be useful. But I agree that it's not easy. And I think the big thing that we have to accept is that it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be easy. But if we are doing a little bit of it at a time, hopefully we'll eventually get to the place that we want to be. But we have to keep pushing forward.
Agreed. That's why we're here building. That's why we show up.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this topic? Here's another thing. Here's another question, I guess. Where in your life do you feel like you are forced to use technology that you wish you didn't have to? You wish that there was like a more freedom tech alternative.
Gasoline.
Gasoline?
Yeah, for your car. I mean, seems like we've had quite a few energy alternatives that have been suggested or developed, and there are some random, or should I say, untimely death around the inventors who come up with those solutions.
Yep.
The oil industry has a stronghold on our energy usage, and at the same time that there is some stuff we do have to be cognizant of. So, for example, I don't know if single point energy is a myth or if it's something that is I don't know if is that the term single point energy, or sort of the not renewable energy. It's like I don't know if single point is the correct term for it. But if
Like
it
your own
is,
grid or something?
pardon
Like what's
me?
single point? What's single point energy? Like your own grid or
No, it's considered kind of a woo-woo energy topic, where energy is sort of created from the ether, and there is a
I
lot of
think 0 point energy is what you're
0
thinking.
point. Yes, 0
That's
point. Thank you, Tom.
it.
Um,
Yeah, you got it.
and if it does exist, it's kind of scary. You could destroy humanity with 0 point energy, and anybody would have the ability to do so. And maybe that's coming, but there are even some other tech. There are some other technologies like hydrogen powered cars seem like a pretty viable source of energy, but it's not pushed at all. And I've looked into companies who are at the forefront of hydrogen energy. It's it is being developed here in the UK, but it's not really being adopted, even though it's safe and it's renewable. And the only byproduct is water, right?
Mhm.
So,
I think that
yeah, I feel like, I was just gonna say, I feel like we're kind of being held hostage by the oil industry.
Yeah. There's some kind of technology which only works if you do it at scale. Like you can't develop like I would say like energy technologies often like this. You can't really develop an energy technology without having like a lot of money. And I think that the same can be said for so, but that's not true for everything, right? Like there's lots of technology that can be built, but in general, our society is geared right now towards providing capital towards these big ideas that can make money, right? And so I think that like there's a ton of space that isn't getting funding because um, it's either up against an existing industry, and they have some uphill battles like a lot of this energy stuff, or it's just too small, but it's big enough that you do need some funding to get it done. And so I think that like one of the things that's very interesting is that both blockchain and AI, in a lot of ways, have potentially reduced the amount of funding that you need to pursue certain types of technologies or ideas. AI because you need less people on your team, you can do more with fewer people, and so it costs less money to get something off the ground, or a single individual can do far more than they could have before. And blockchain because it reduces the barriers to a market. Hey, you might not be able to make enough in Canada to do this thing, but if you can distribute it across the world and people are paying you, maybe this is something that you can actually pursue. And so I think that like right now our processes as a society are geared towards these big ideas, these big changes. But in general, I think it's far more resilient to have like more smaller ideas, kind of cottage industries that an individual can work on and execute on and make something interesting. And so one of the mantras I've been having lately is the future is small. And I think that we've gone so far on this kind of like centralized, top down, and just kind of like monolithic industry and technology structure. I think we need to go back towards those kind of like smaller grassroots from the bottom up individual technologies. Hey, Tom, I see that you unmuted.
Oh, I think I was just unmuted from before when we were discussing Nikola Tesla's contributions to the electrical grid.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like Tesla was doing a lot of interesting things, and in the end, his alternating current didn't win out against what's his face's who am I thinking of? Newton? No, not Newton. That guy's way further along.
Edison.
Edison. Edison's direct current, because Edison was a marketing genius. He would buy elephants and hook them up to alternating currents to fry them in front of large groups of people to basically just make them scared of Tesla's technology. And it's how he got the public on his side, and it's how he got some major government contracts to push DC current, which is interestingly enough, um, I think it's like worse to transmit DC current over long distances. Anyways,
I think that's right.
yeah. So Tesla was looking at creating something to the benefit of society. Edison was looking at something to enrich himself, and Edison ended up winning, which is interesting.
There's also the conspiracy theory that Tesla was like murdered over the fact that he was just like, we could do free electricity for everybody. We could just put it in the air and people can just get it for free. And then they were just like, what? We can't bill for it? How will we meter that? That's crazy. And then they murdered him.
I mean, I
Apocryphal
can
or
believe
not,
it.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
It's like I don't want to believe, and at the same time, I guess I just kind of do. Maybe it's a cynic in me.
The further
Yeah.
you go, that's the rabbit hole, the creepier it gets as well. The person who was charged with going and retrieving Tesla's documents was Donald Trump's uncle, Fred Trump.
So,
Interesting.
I mean,
Oh,
right,
the Trumps are everywhere.
the conspiracies write themselves, right?
It's true. Conspiracies do write themselves. Yeah, right. So what I'm thinking about over the next month is freedom technology. I think it's really important. I think like what I really want is to create technology that I can use on a day-to-day basis. Hopefully that I can use with other people like you, like with other people in my lives. And I think that it's important enough to work on. But I'm not quite sure what that looks like. I mean, one of the things that we've mentioned in the past is a kind of like easy way to accept money, to set up a simple storefront, right? Like I still believe that that's a missing piece and that's something interesting. And I also think that if we keep that away from fiat, from the fiat world, from TradFi, it will be easier for us to create something, but it might be harder for people to adopt. But actually, that barrier of getting people to adopt, that like individual finding their own on ramp and off ramp, I think is a kind of vital piece of all of this too. So, anyways, that's what I'm thinking. But yeah, any other questions or comments on this? Okay. Well, why don't we end a little early then? I just want to say thank you to all of you for being here. I think it can be difficult to talk to people about this kind of stuff. I don't know. I think um, that idea that it's conspiracy theory, that you're like kind of like got a chip on your shoulder, because of like the way society is built. It it's not a very it's not something that makes people want to chat with you. It's not something that people really like to talk about, hear about, because it's quite frankly something that you can't really do much about, and also something that most people are willing to ignore, to just continue on with their lives. But the further we go, and we've been saying this for years, the further we go, the more we see like these abuses of power, of these large centralized organizations. More and more people are waking up to this idea that like, hey, I actually have to worry about this stuff because it actually affects my day-to-day life. And I think that it's really important for us to think about some of the things that we can do about it. And so I just want to say thank you to all of you for discussing this with me. It's something that keeps me going, and I appreciate all of you for being here. So thank you.
Thank you, Lynx. Thanks for thinking about interesting things for us to talk about and discuss. Have a very nice trip traveling the world, and stay safe out there.
Thanks a lot. See you guys
Thanks
later.
Bye, guys.
for everybody for showing up. See you later.
Bye, everybody.
All right.